I would also, before I go any further, just allow me to, on behalf of us all, express my deepest sympathies to the families of the slain police officers, Constables Rachel McCrow and Matthew Arnold, and the other victims of that appalling tragedy. Just awful. Now, let's get on with the show where conservative is cool and woke is a joke, and where I'm beginning tonight's show with a new acknowledgement of country that I believe we should all adopt. We, the citizens of Australia, with the precious right and responsibility of true equality for all under Australian law, acknowledge and give respect to all our forebears, Aboriginals, Torres Strait Islanders, convicts, pioneers, soldiers, settlers, migrants, bushies and battlers, and all our Australian descendants since, who have enriched our great continent from the dream time to the current time. We acknowledge and uphold the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Australia that created our democratic great nation, that protects our freedoms, our national values, that unites our society, that obligates us to respect the human rights and free speech of all Australians. We acknowledge, as citizens and custodians of our country, our individual responsibility to make our nation greater, to make all our lives better, to make our children's futures brighter, to speak with respect to each other, to look after each other, and to perfect and give purpose to our cherished land. My thanks to a regular viewer of this show, Dr. Barry Reid, a Lib Dem candidate, for those fine words. And I implore the Coalition to adopt words like those, or even those words, as the official welcome to country for important occasions. It is unacceptable that we are increasingly forced to acknowledge a divisive creed that is inherently dismissive of the toil and labour and sacrifices of generations of Australians who were born on this land or came to this land, escaped tyranny to come here, and whose children are Indigenous to this land. Barry Reid's excellent words pay respect to and acknowledge all Australians to whom we enjoy the prosperity and rich abundances of this land. We who enjoy them are indebted. Speaking of the rich abundances of this land, doesn't the hypocrisy of the left and the Greens make you sometimes want to vomit? The environmentalists leap up and down in indignation, chaining themselves to fences, sabotaging equipment, gluing themselves to whatever, and so on, every time a coal mine or fracking is suggested. But when it comes to mining the minerals essential to making renewables, they're silent, nowhere to be seen. I was intrigued, but not surprised, by this story in the Weekend Australian about the silica mines planned for Cape York. Silica is found in the pure white sands of Cape York, the finest sand in the world. That is the basis for silicon, one of the most critical ingredients in solar panels. According to the Australian newspaper, 200 million tonnes of Cape York silica is now destined for China to make solar panels for the lovies, thanks to the lobbying work of Kevin Rudd's right-hand man, the so-called world's greatest treasurer, Wayne Swan, and his access to the highest levels of the Palaszczuk Labour government. Ironically, it was Bob Hawke, the great Labour hero of the past, who blocked the original mine proposed in order to preserve the environment. Don't you just love the hypocrisy of the Labour Party? Now, don't get me wrong. I'm all in favour of mining, and I'm all in favour of Aboriginal Australia benefiting from the fantastic jobs and, more importantly, careers that mining has to offer. But the hypocrisy here is unbelievable. The left and the Greens demonise anyone who digs up fossil fuels, which we all rely on, and accuses them of being greedy developers who are creating wealth out of destroying the planet. But when it comes to digging up materials for the $1 trillion renewables industry that most lefties are heavily invested in, oh, that's fine. That's all okay, because they are saving the planet. Saving the planet, that is, by destroying it. And to add to the grotesque hypocrisy, Wayne Swan and his acolytes claim to have the support of the traditional owners. Whoops, tick that box off then. Well, unfortunately for the left, who would love to lump all Aboriginals into one convenient mob, black Australians are just like white Australians. I've got news for you, lefties. Black Australians are just like white Australians or any other colour of Australians. We are all individuals, not a one-size-fits-all collective determined by colour. There are plenty of Aborigines who are deeply opposed to the project up there in Cape York, including this family, ironically called the Bowens. No relation, I hope, for their sake, but of course, this particular family who are in the article and other Indigenous Australians all get ignored because they are the wrong sort of Indigenous Australians. They do not automatically comply with Labor. And there's a warning for any Aborigines who are thinking of supporting The Voice. It will only ever be your voice so long as you agree with what they, the Labor Party, are saying. Unfortunately, the sheer stupidity and hypocrisy of Labor's Chris Bowen and the Green movement goes from the environmentally tragic to the laughably absurd. Already in Melbourne, according to the Herald Sun, residents of one suburb have distributed a flyer demanding other residents ration their electricity use so that they can charge their electric vehicles. Quotes from this flyer. I presume it's not a hoax, but you never know. Quote, "We have been presented with some challenges in relation to electricity use. In short, our infrastructure is from 1822 and our cars are from 2022, the flyer says. The letter calls for a roster to schedule charging days and times and asks other residents to also ration their power and avoid using air conditioners, washers and dryers. The small sacrifice today will help put an end to global warming and associated issues," the flyer says. As I said, too funny. It's got to be a hoax, but probably not. We're talking Melbourne after all. Meanwhile, in the United States, according to the Daily Mail, over 1,000 workers are being laid off at a Jeep plant because, quote, of the increasing cost related to the electrification of the automotive market. In other words, electric vehicles cost people their jobs. No doubt the left care. Why would the Labor Party care about people's jobs? I mean, seriously. But surely, it's worth it, say the lefties and the virtue signalers. We have to transition to clean energy. Right. Well, here's what clean energy and environmentalism actually looks like.
How you going, folks? I thought I'd grab your attention for a minute this morning and just talk to you about something that's becoming very important in Australia, and that's electric cars coming in. Something we need to think about because the environment needs us to be careful with it. Now, I've just turned up out here. I'm halfway across the Nullarbor at the moment, and things are starting to change. As you can see, we've got electric vehicle charging stations. Now, we didn't see that here 5 years ago. People are becoming aware of this, and we all need to be. Let me take a moment. I'll show you how it works. Come this way. So this is what we do. The first thing you need to do when you're becoming environmentally friendly is cut a few trees down, because you're going to need some pallets to put your diesel fuel on, of course. Now, this fuel now runs through this gadget, which is called a generator. The outer casing of the generator is made of metal, iron ore. It's natural, so the whole lot is environmental. Inside there, a lot of copper wire, coils, it generates the electricity. The electricity comes through to this here at the front, which is, of course, our charging station, where we plug our environmentally friendly car into, and whoop, there we go.
What a legend. But Satire is only funny, as I've pointed out before, and indeed, as many have pointed out before, if it is anchored in the truth. And the truth is that the climate cult is riddled with falsehoods and hypocrisy, and it is you who is being played upon by people raking in billions from renewables into their own hedge funds, exploiting your goodwill to make a fortune for themselves. We are witnessing stupidity on steroids on a magnitude very rarely seen in human history, or a cynical money-grabbing scheme whereby renewables investors and Chinese manufacturers are in cahoots to make squillions out of your energy impoverishment. You choose. But at least a handful of politicians are beginning to see the calamity we are facing and the hypocrisy of the left. In America, where the Democrats are busy mandating electric vehicles, the same Democrats are preventing a copper mine from going ahead, despite copper being one of the essential elements required for the increased production of electric vehicles. Here is Californian Republican Tom McClintock pointing out, finally, the lunacy of the renewables cult.
On the one hand, you want to mandate not only electric cars, but industrial-scale backup batteries for wind and solar farms, all in the name of saving the planet. Yet on the other hand, you want to radically restrict mining, also in the name of saving the planet. Well, you can't do both.
And this is, of course, the key point, where we, and more importantly, our children, are being lied to. The renewables revolution requires a massive increase in mining across our planet and a massive plundering of rare earth minerals to provide the materials that are used in wind turbines, solar panels, and all forms of electric storage batteries, which are essential, we are told, for electric vehicles. By mandating that consumers swap to electric vehicles or EVs, governments are, by definition, massively increasing mining and the requirement for mining across our planet.
In fact, according to the International Energy Agency, an electric car requires 6 times the mineral inputs of a comparable internal combustion vehicle, 6 times the mining to produce a comparable car. And of course, copper is a critical component in this technology, and copper is what you're trying to shut down in the matter before us today. If it is your contention that the mining required to produce electric cars is a threat to the environment, then you are also admitting that the electric cars that require it are a threat to the environment. Can't you see how foolish and self-destructive and absurdly contradictory these policies have become?
Touché. Yet here in Australia, we have the asinine Energy Minister Chris Bowen hanging your entire future on the push for renewables and electric vehicles to replace what we already have and what we rely upon. But unfortunately, this climate comedy only spells future calamity.
You're making all of the things that we depend upon for our quality of life more scarce and therefore more expensive. You're fixated on a 1-degree rise of global temperatures over the next century, but you couldn't care less that you're making it financially impossible for many people to heat their homes in sub-freezing winters. Europe's now reverting to burning wood to survive this winter.
Wouldn't it be nice if we had a major political party here who was prepared to stand up against this insanity?